Everybody for joining us today. I'm going to stop the share of my screen. Hope everyone can see us. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is David Singer. I am the Regional Sales Manager here in Massachusetts from Kendal at Home. The Kendal at Home course series is designed to educate, to engage, and to inform. We hope that you and your family, your friends will find the time to join us throughout the coming months for many of the courses that are yet to come and that are on offer. Most of them are virtual, but soon we do hope to be in person as conditions allow. Thanks to the Friends Foundation for Aging for their generous contribution and support of our programming. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Lindsay Scott and Ryan Anderson from our Cleveland office. And before I get into the prime introduction, just a little housekeeping. We will take questions and do some Q&A, which will be available at the end. For those of you, if you want to ask a question, you should see little buttons at the bottom of your screen marked Q&A or chat. Feel free to please enter your questions in there. We will get to them, we promise, at the end. Ryan and Lindsay are helping to monitor that as well. We will be back, as I said, at the end to give you a preview of some upcoming talks as well. So now I would like to take this opportunity to introduce, and it is my great pleasure to welcome Christina Perretti of the Greater Boston Food Bank for a discussion of the great and important work that she and her colleagues are doing here in Massachusetts. Thanks for joining us, Christina. You are muted. There you go.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you, David. I'm just going to share my screen here. I have some slides to share with you all. Apologize. Okay. Oops, and why is this? And my computer's frozen. Okay, I apologize. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm not sure why my computer is frozen, but of course, this is how it would happen. So hopefully it will come back to life and I can just start talking around my slides and then they will, let's see.
That's fine. Technology is a wonderful thing.
It totally is. Okay, now can you see my slides?
Yes, we can. Perfect. We can see it and we can hear you, Christina. Thank you.
Fabulous. Let me just go backwards, of course. I don't know why. I apologize. This is, okay, let me try this one more time.
There we go.
All right. So I apologize for that. So thank you, David. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. I want to say thank you all so much for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our work. And as a former short-term Ohio resident, I am going to pretend that I am back in Ohio with many of you today. And as you may have seen or noticed from my Miami University background. And as you heard, I currently oversee our programs and community capacity team and have held many different roles at GBFB during my time here. Our programs and capacity team is responsible for overseeing all of the different ways in which we invest in the communities we serve. This includes managing 4 direct service programs, 2 of which serve exclusively seniors, the capacity building support we offer to our partner agencies, and our annual capacity grant program. Ultimately, at GBFB, our mission is not just to distribute food, but is to end hunger here. And the way we do this is through our commitment to the care of our community, a vibrant region composed of many individuals, families, and organizations with different backgrounds and lived experiences. I'll start this morning by giving you a snapshot of food insecurity in Eastern Massachusetts and sharing some high-level information about GBFB and its history. Then I'll move to talking about our work specifically with seniors, and we'll finish by sharing some information about how you can get involved. As David said, I'm happy to take questions at the end or as we go, and feel free to type those into the chat. So let me start by saying that hunger is here. Hunger in America is defined by food insecurity. And without daily access to nutritious food, individuals cannot conduct healthy and active lives. Prior to COVID-19, 1 in 13 people in Eastern Massachusetts was food insecure. And that number has jumped to 1 in 10 people, or 1 in 9 children in 2021. And while I'll focus this morning on Eastern Massachusetts, the facts, figures, and issues I'll share are not unique to the Boston area, but are mirrored in cities and towns across the country. For example, the Cleveland Food Bank reports that 1 in 5 people in their service area is food insecure. That's an astonishing 20% of the population. Do some quick math based on the folks that are joining us today. So based on these food insecurity numbers of the people who are joining us today, so either 10% in Massachusetts or 20% in Ohio or the Cleveland area, statistically speaking, are food insecure. In Massachusetts, despite having one of the highest minimum wages in the country, families with 2 full-time minimum wage earners make only $56,000 a year combined. In addition, Massachusetts has one of the highest costs of living in the country, and a family with 2 full-time wage earners with 2 children must make over $122,000 per year just to meet their most basic needs. For families earning minimum wage, that's almost a $70,000 a year gap between what they're making and the minimum just needed to meet those most basic needs. And as you can see, about 1 year into the pandemic, the unemployment rate in Massachusetts was 16.4%, the highest in the US. Many families weren't even making that $56,000 a year minimum wage earnings. So what do folks experiencing unemployment or underemployment or these enormous wage gaps do? For many families, this gap means that they must make really difficult choices between basic needs. Pay for utilities or pay for food. Pay for much needed medical care and essential medicine or for food. Pay for food or for transportation to work or to school. These are decisions that no one should have to make. And as I previously mentioned, with food insecurity moving from 1 in 13 to 1 in 10, these choices are affecting an incredible number of families, particularly in communities of color. We know from our Gaps in Food Access study that food insecurity was highest among adults with children and people of color. We have a quote here you can see from a single mother in Malden. Food pantries and SNAP benefits have really helped my family through this pandemic, along with the extra PEBT benefits. Kids eat a lot, and I would never be able to support them and myself if I didn't have food stamps and food pantries. As this quote points out, many families relied and are still relying on a combination of food pantry support and programs like SNAP and PEBT, etc. And we'll talk a little bit more about SNAP in a bit. So as I mentioned before, the cost of living is really high in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is the second most expensive state in the country per meal, and Eastern Massachusetts has the highest food costs in the state. We have another quote here from a mother and food pantry user in Boston. I find that food prices have skyrocketed recently, and that was one factor that led my family to go to a food pantry. So throughout COVID, we've held regular conference calls to share information from GBFB with our partner agencies and to understand what's happening in the network. And month after month, our agency partners report that in addition to serving existing clients, they're seeing new clients who are accessing their pantry for the first time. Sorry, it should be advancing. I don't know why. Okay, here we go. I apologize for my technical difficulties today. So I've told you a little bit about the landscape, and now I'll share a bit about GBFB. So as you know, our mission is to end hunger here. And without GBFB and the food bank network, emergency providers of meals such as food pantries and meal programs, et cetera, would not exist as we know them today. And before I talk about more about where we are today, I'll take you on a little tour through our history. So in 1974, Kip Tiernan started what is now known as the Greater Boston Food Bank by distributing food from the back of her station wagon. During the Great Depression, Kip Tiernan's grandmother opened her kitchen to feed people in need. At that time, people would mark an X on the sidewalk outside of their homes to signify a safe place to get help. Kip saw firsthand how simple acts of kindness could help people through dark times. And as I mentioned, in 1974, Kip started to distribute food from her station wagon to those in need, and later founded what we now know as GBFB. From these humble beginnings, we've grown into the leading hunger relief agency in New England and one of the largest in the country. Today, GBFB provides over 98 million pounds of healthy food each year to more than 600 distribution sites across Eastern Massachusetts. We continue to pay tribute to our history with an X at the main entrance of our lobby, indicating that GBFB remains a safe place to get help. Since I've been at GBFB for so long, I'm thankful to have met Kip early in my time at the food bank, and I continue to be inspired by her life and her work. So after being officially incorporated in 1981, GBFB became a member of America's Second Harvest, which is now known as Feeding America, in 1982. And there are hundreds of food banks around the country, including many in Ohio, which I'll show you later on in the presentation, that are also members of Feeding America. And in 1995, our current president and CEO, Catherine, joined GBFB. So in 1999, GBFB exceeded 100 million total pounds of food distributed. Remember that 100 million number as we go through this. In 2009, GBFB moved into what some of us still call the new building, a state-of-the-art facility, which we call the Yawkey Distribution Center. In 2011, GBFB announced that it would increase annual food distribution by 3.5 million pounds to provide at least one meal a day to everyone at risk of hunger in Eastern Massachusetts. The same year, we launched our school-based pantry and mobile market programs. And then 2 years later, in 2013, we launched our capacity building grant program to support our hunger relief partners across Eastern Massachusetts. Then in 2015, we reached the milestone of 600 million pounds, total million pounds of food distributed. Massachusetts also joined the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, and GBFB becomes the only provider of CSFP in our state. In 2018, we formed the Hunger to Health Collaboratory. In 2020, led the Rise and Shine Massachusetts Coalition, and were instrumental in advocating for the Breakfast After the Bell bill that was signed. And here we are in 2021, distributing our 1 billionth pound of food in our history. And we conducted the first statewide food insecurity study in Massachusetts during the pandemic, and developed the gaps in food access report. So how do we work? So GBFB acquires food through food industry partners and financial donors. The food is sorted, stored, and packed in our state-of-the-art facility in the New Market area. And then food is distributed to our network of distribution partners, which, as I said before, includes meal programs, food pantries, and over 80 direct distribution sites. Children and families and seniors in need then receive the food for healthy meals and hope for brighter futures. So if you visited our building, it would look a lot like going to Costco. Our warehouse is full of pallets of food, refrigerated, frozen, dry, which agencies choose using our online ordering system. The orders are selected and agencies either pick up their orders right at GBFB, or at regional cross docks, which we operate throughout our service area, or the food is delivered directly to them by our GBFB trucks. And for those of you who are familiar with Massachusetts, we serve roughly the eastern third of the state, which includes many of the most densely populated cities. And we serve partners all the way from the New Hampshire border up there in Amesbury, all the way down to the tip of Cape Cod at Provincetown and the islands. And you'll see each one of our food pantry and meal program partners noted on the map with a green dot. So earlier I shared that our 2011 goal was to provide 1 meal a day to everyone in need in our service area. We've since expanded that goal and are now on course to close the meal gap by distributing enough food to provide 3 meals a day to every food insecure individual in Eastern Massachusetts. Our business and data analytics team uses existing food insecurity data and our own information about where food is being distributed to identify these gaps. Those gaps are represented here by the different colors. And our capacity and programs team uses this map to identify new partnerships, areas of need, and to prioritize capacity building activities. The map is available on our website and is totally interactive. So for those of you who live in Massachusetts or who are familiar with the area, I would definitely suggest checking it out to learn more about food assistance and gaps in your own cities and towns. And you can zoom in on the different areas to learn about how much food is currently being distributed in each city and town and what the gap is. So, of the food we acquire, it may surprise you to know that about 3/4 of it is actually purchased and about only 1/4 or so is donated. Of the purchased, that is provided, the money for that is provided, about 40% of that through private funding. The balance of that is from a couple different federal and state programs. USDA, otherwise known as TFAP, is a federal food program, as is CSFP, and then MEFAP is our own Massachusetts food program. And then you can see of the 27% that's donated, the mix of where that comes from. It's mostly retailers and farms, with smaller amounts coming straight from manufacturers, from wholesalers, from food drives, or from other sources. And of those approximately 600 distribution partners that you saw sort of sprinkled throughout our service area, about 90%, or the vast majority, are food pantries. We have, as I mentioned, some direct service programs, some shelters, some meals programs, but the most substantial chunk of our partners are food pantries. So as our food acquisition team is working to bring in food, it's really with the lens that nutrition matters. 92% of our food inventory meets our high nutrition standards. We have 2 registered dietitians on staff, and they rank and analyze every item that comes into inventory. They use a simple to understand red, yellow, and green ranking system, which is visible to agencies when they order food using our online shopping system. They also prioritize fresh and frozen produce, as well as protein and dairy for both the nutritional value and because these categories typically include some of the most expensive items for families to purchase. So as you can see on the slide, 24% of our food distribution is fresh and frozen produce, and 28% is protein and dairy. So I've included just a quick chart and a sample of the red, yellow, and green swap analysis. It was created by FoodShare, which is one of our sister food banks in Connecticut. And you can see that there's, from the chart to sort of the poster, there's a lot of science involved behind the scenes in all of these calculations. But the result is a labeling system that is very easy to identify and to be understood by food pantry staff and clients. So we talked about the rise in need, and this graphic shows how GBFB has risen to meet the demand. So prior to the start of the pandemic, GBFB distributed about 1.3 million pounds of food per month, or per week, sorry. And since the start of the pandemic, we've increased that distribution to approximately 2.5 million pounds each week, which is an enormous increase. And as a result, last year, GBFB distributed 117 million pounds of food, equating to 96 million healthy meals. And as you can see here, since the start of the pandemic, GBFB has distributed over 150 million meals. As you can imagine, despite positive changes in the economy and the unemployment rate, food insecurity has not gone away or even returned to pre-pandemic levels. And as we've learned through previous recessions, changes in the food insecurity rate really lag behind other economic indicators. So now I would love to tell you a little bit about our senior focused programs, starting with SNAP. And SNAP is the program formerly known as food stamps. So we have a small but mighty SNAP team, and they are really dedicated to increasing SNAP awareness and participation, particularly with seniors. SNAP is such an important program for many reasons, including that it allows for dignity of choice, allows clients to select culturally responsive foods that may not be available at their local food pantry, and puts money back into the local economy. Our SNAP team works one-on-one with clients in both English and Spanish to conduct eligibility screenings, submit applications, troubleshoot issues, and to maximize benefits. And as you can imagine, navigating government benefits is not the simplest thing to do. So this one-on-one support is really important, particularly for seniors. We also work with our agency partners and train them how to talk with clients about SNAP. And we provide the materials in 8 different languages for them to post at their food pantries and distribution sites, or to print and to distribute to clients. Because of this focus on seniors and the one-on-one level of assistance we provide, about 30% of our SNAP clients are over 60. And we also operate 2 senior-focused distribution programs, Brown Bag and CSFP. CSFP stands for the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, and is one of the federal food programs that I mentioned earlier. Combined, these 2 programs provide a reliable and nutritious source of food for about 7,500 seniors every month. Brown Bag is our own program, and CSFP, as I said, is a federal food program. It's operated in all 50 states now, including, of course, the state of Ohio. And through these programs, clients receive pre-packed bags of groceries. And these bags typically include pantry staples like cereal, shelf-stable milk, pasta and rice, proteins such as tuna or chicken, and meals like soup. We also include fresh produce, which could be whatever we have that day, and anything from potatoes and carrots and squash, sort of in the fall and winter, to bananas and oranges and salad mix and locally grown peppers in the summer. And as with all of our programs, our goal is really to meet clients where they are, and to reduce and address as much as possible the things we know that are barriers to access. Self-reliance, lack of information, and stigma top the list. So therefore, we partner with organizations that are already known and trusted throughout the community. And so we typically partner with councils on aging, senior centers, low-income senior housing buildings, etc. And for our other two direct distribution programs, Mobile Market and School-Based Pantry, which are similar, but serve a wider clientele, we partner with organizations like schools, community colleges, veterans organizations, YMCAs, and more. So for Brown Bag, the food is selected by my team using the swap method that I shared a couple slides ago. And for CSFP, bags are packed at GBFB by volunteers, 100% volunteer packed, and are stored for shipping to our partner sites. And although CSFP is largely shelf stable by its nature, we do add cheese and as much fresh produce as possible. And those are packed into the bags by volunteers before they're distributed to clients. Our SNAP team also works really closely with our program partners to provide SNAP information and assistance to their participants. We pack SNAP flyers into the bags. When we send letters out to our program participants, we include a SNAP flyer as well. And pre-COVID, our SNAP team would go out and make appointments with seniors before or after the distribution to help them work on their application. So I've spent a lot of time talking to you about our organization and our work. And now it's my turn to tell you how you can partner with GBFB and our sister food banks to end hunger here. So number one, donate. Donate helps us to keep the operation running, to distribute those 2 million pounds of food weekly, including the fresh produce that goes to our seniors in the CSFP and Brown Bag programs. It helps to fund capacity grants to local food pantries, which could be anything from building renovations to additional cooler and freezer storage, new trucks, and sort of everything and anything in between. And it helps to purchase food. Like I said, for example, the fresh produce that we send to Brown Bag and CSFP sites. GBFB purchases by the tractor trailer load. And so we have an incredible buying power, enabling each dollar to go further to serve those in need. Number two, volunteer. Volunteering at GBFB, sorting or packing food, such as the CSFP boxes, or with a food pantry or meals program in your own community. So much of the food assistance network, not just in Boston, but across the country, really relies on volunteers, and having committed volunteers is really crucial to the stability of the network. We do have a call it Need Food. It's a food resources finder on our website. You could go in there and pop in your zip code or any city and town and find the agencies, the member agencies in that area, either to refer folks who might need food assistance or if you're interested in volunteering. So number three is advocate. So we talked about how the food insecurity rates have remained high. We are working hard to keep this on the minds of our food donors, financial donors, and government officials who oversee programs like state programs like MEFAP, or federal food programs like TFAP/USDA, CSFP, SNAP, etc. You can contact your legislators and ask them to support food insecurity related programs and legislation. And you can talk with town officials about what they're doing to end hunger in your community. You can advocate for programs and regulations that remove barriers to food access, reduce stigma, and promote equitable food access. And more information about our advocacy efforts is also available on our website. And lastly, if you're not in the Boston area, or you are sharing this information with friends in other places and parts around the country, you can find your local food bank through Feeding America. And so I included the website on the slide before, but it's feedingamerica.org. And this is just an example. If you go in, pop your zip code in or pop your state in, it will pop up all of the food banks in your area and then provide contact information. So you can get in touch that way and find local resources in your community. So finally, just thank you. Thank you so much for your interest in the issue of food insecurity and inviting me to share our work. It's been a pleasure joining you this morning. And if folks have questions, I am happy to take them, but thank you.
Thanks, Christina. I'm going to invite my colleagues to join us again. I do know there is one question that came up in the Q&A, and I have a few myself, if you don't mind. I know one question that came up in the Q&A was, which is the bigger challenge, attracting the donations of dollars and goods or the outreach needed to attract eligible population?
That is a great question. I'm not sure I have an answer to that. They are both enormous challenges. Obviously, we talked a little bit about, sort of enabling people to understand food insecurity. The map is helpful for folks to see, that there is food insecurity in their own cities and towns. So it's our job to educate folks about the need in their community, about the options, and to sort of keep that on the mind of folks in our state, and to make sure they know how they can help, whether that's donations, and that could be individuals, corporations, grants, or through food retailers donating food. Personally, on my end of the business, the bigger challenge of the two for me is to attract that eligible population. We obviously already distribute a lot of food within our service area, but there's still a gap. And serving the folks in that gap is a challenge, both identifying who they are, identifying resources that are available, or using our capacity grants to build up agencies in their area, and then understanding why folks aren't coming. Is it because they don't know about the resources? Is it because they are not able to attend during the distribution time? And on that end, is there something we can do to help the agency increase their capacity to open more days or stay open more hours? Is it stigma? And so that's really the challenge that my team is tasked with, is figuring out, who is in that gap of folks who aren't already accessing services. Who are they and why? And what can we do to inform them of what resources are out there, reduce the stigma, and make them feel more comfortable coming to a food pantry, or make it more accessible to them in terms of hours and transportation and all of that. So that's a very long answer, but from my perspective and in my work, I would say the outreach is the most challenging. But again, none of it can be done without the donations. And
yeah, the stigma part, I've witnessed it. And people I think are sometimes embarrassed. You talked about the cost to survive in Massachusetts. And I assume that you can scale this across the country to Ohio, the Southwest, wherever you want to go. And people don't realize, I think, especially today, right, with the distribution problems we have, which also drives up costs of food and everything that may be driving up the cost of food further, and the cost just to live and supply a family to provide, can be very difficult. And some people, I think, are embarrassed to go out. We had a few, you may know the name, food drops in my town. And one of the eye openers for me was when I saw people pulling up in extremely nice and expensive vehicles. And it made you realize, look, times were good. but anyone can come on hard times, and it can affect anybody. And you don't sometimes realize how widespread food insecurity really is.
Definitely, I agree. And lots of folks have made similar comments and realizations at our mobile food distributions. I think on one hand, it speaks to, folks, anybody could lose their job at any time, or anybody could experience a serious medical event at any time that completely changes the financial picture for them moving forward. So you don't know what folks' situation is. It may recently have changed. And that's certainly something that we see all the time. And one of the things that's so important to me about our direct distribution programs, so those 80 partners, our school-based pantry, our mobile markets, our brown bag, CSFP, is to remove stigma as much as we can in those distributions. So as I mentioned, we partner with schools. They do things like face painting, they've had barbecues, they've had the high school like musical come and perform. They do anything they can to make it an event and not, and try to unassociate the stigma that, sometimes comes with going to a food pantry. And one of the things that I always tell new partners the first time that we're talking to them about partnering is, for example, at a school, I say, we want everyone to show up. We want the teachers to be there. We want the principal in line. And the principal may not need the food assistance, but seeing the principal attending and taking a bag of food and shopping, might make other folks feel comfortable and not feel like people are looking at the line or the participants and saying, gee, who showed up? The principal was there. At a health center, the doctors are there. So we're hopefully creating a really safe environment where we're lowering the stigma and reaching more people who might not otherwise have felt comfortable coming.
My apologies. Lindsay had a question. I didn't want to cut her off.
Okay, that's okay. It was more of a thought, or I'm curious, Christina. I would imagine because of the stigma, you probably have a lot of people who should have been coming to you far sooner than they did, and end up in a real crisis. Yeah, again, probably more just of a comment, but as I listened to you talk about the stigma, and I know a local family who really always put off any help because they thought that's not for us. That's for people who really have nothing. We still have something, and didn't feel like they could take advantage, that they had to wait till things got really bad. So I'd imagine that's probably a pretty important message you're always trying to get out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, it both speaks to, as people may be, getting a new job or their financial situation may be starting to turn around. It still takes a long time because they may have had a month, 5 months, 6 months, a year with no job, where they were making those trade-offs. And also, one of the things that I always make sure to talk about when I talk with partners or clients about SNAP, and it's a huge misconception, is folks feel like I don't need it. There's somebody who needs it more than me. I don't want to take it from somebody else. And there is more than enough food in our warehouse. We are constantly trying to figure out ways to bring in more food. And folks who are applying for SNAP, the bucket of SNAP money is sort of determined by the number of eligible recipients. And therefore, if you are, barely getting by and worried about being on SNAP because you're technically making it, even though it might be hard, and you don't want to take from somebody else, you're not. You are not. Your participation does not mean that somebody else can't. So we definitely try to have those conversations as part of our, reducing stigma and barriers and encouraging people to participate, but you are totally right.
So Christina, if I could, a kind of a question and a statement, a blend, if you will. I think you said there were 600 food pantries in the area the Greater
Yeah.
Boston Food Bank services. I mean, I'm assuming, and maybe wrong, that there's one or maybe more than one in every town, but are there towns that don't have one? And if you don't have a food bank in your town, can people just go to a neighboring town or a different community?
Yes. So there are about 600. I can say that in Boston, there are probably 120 or so food pantries. So
Oh,
there are areas like those most populated cities, Lawrence, Boston, where there are Fall River, New Bedford, more options. There are definitely cities and towns that don't have any food pantries. Many food pantries are open to residents of any community or surrounding communities. Um, Many understand that for stigma reasons, you might not want to go to a food pantry in your town. You might not want to see your child's friend's mother running the food distribution. So you might want to go in another town, or you might work in another town, and it might be easier for you to stop after work and go. So that's something we definitely encourage. Is folks to be open to surrounding towns, especially if there aren't resources, and be sort of advertising in those cities and towns. And also, we are constantly looking at the map and looking at where there aren't cities and town, or where there aren't food pantries, to try to understand if there are existing resources there that we can help work to build up, or if a new pantry is needed. And I'll lastly just say that one of the things that our business and data analytics team does is they look at not just where we distributed the food to. So it could be, we sent it to a food pantry in Lynn. Our partners provide data on the zip codes that families live in who use their services. So we know that we're providing X many pounds of food to Lynn, but really X percent of these clients live in Saugus, or X percent live in Swampscott, or X percent live in Peabody. So we are better able to identify where there really are gaps. And we have some visibility to where folks are coming from other cities and towns to visit a pantry.
We have a question from one of our attendees, two questions really. So I'll give you the overall and you can take them as you wish. Do the majority of your clients take advantage over a long period of time or more limited? Do you have any idea of kind of the average length of time the average family would use the food bank? Months, years, weeks? And then kind of tied to that of maybe the average age of a client.
Yeah, great questions. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer in terms of a specific amount of time or a specific age. I can tell you that food pantry clients are everyone. They are families, they are seniors, they are folks who have, struggled with unemployment or underemployment for a long period of time and use the food bank or a food pantry as a regular source of food. They're folks who may have just lost a job or have enormous medical bills that they need to pay, and maybe new users. We also see in different parts of our service area where there are sort of like seasonal users. So families who might live in cities and towns where kids are getting free meals every day at school, breakfast and lunch. Those folks might need to use a food pantry in the summer when kids are home. They're not getting 2 meals a day at school, but they might not need to use a food pantry during the school year. Also, places like, and I'm not sure if there's sort of an equivalent in Ohio, but I'm sure there are around the country. On Cape Cod, we have a lot of seasonal businesses. And so seasonal workers, Cape Cod is sort of built around the tourism industry and the islands. So there are seasonal workers there that, might not need a food pantry in the summer. They have their job. they are employed, everything is fine. And then when their seasonal business closes in the winter, they might need some assistance until they're back into that position in the summer. So it is everybody. There are, and like I said, there are certainly folks who, use food resources for a long period of time. There are folks who use it to sort of help in between jobs or events. And there are definitely new users brought about by things like pandemic, unemployment, medical situations, etc.
Yeah. There's always a need, and there always likely will be. It'd be nice to think there won't be, but likely.
We would. Yep. We always say we'd love to put ourselves out of business.
Right.
That's really the end goal, is to, I love my job and I'm so happy to be here, but I would love to not have to be.
Yeah. So it's Feeding America, right? So that's the overarching organization. I'm guessing then they also provide, so if there's a Greater Boston Food Bank, there must be a Central Mass or Western Mass Food Bank and various ones. And so I'm thinking of my own town, we have a food pantry.
Okay.
That food pantry, I'm assuming then is getting their food from whatever this Central Mass area food bank would be, which is now coming through Feeding America.
Yes, generally speaking, yes. So there are, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, 200 and something maybe, Feeding America food banks. So in Massachusetts, there is the Western Mass Food Bank. There's the Worcester County Food Bank, which only serves Worcester County. And then there's the Greater Boston Food Bank. There are independent food banks that are not part of that Feeding America system. The Merrimack Valley Food Bank serves Lowell and the surrounding areas. So very likely the food banks in your regions are part of Feeding America.
I'm looking it up to find out.
Yes.
I think another way that people can help, right? Especially if you know of your local food bank. Google's your friend here and the website that you showed us. But it's not just necessarily donating money or food, but time. So the local food bank always needs human power, right? To run, to distribute food, to organize. And I know we also had what they called food drops. I guess I'm going to ask, every town must be different. So like in my town, the food pantry, I believe, is only open Saturdays, but maybe some towns they're more widely available. There are food drops where they have if people who are in need know, hopefully, to go and look on their town or city website, they might see a posting, right, for a food drop where they can sign up to go get a case of food at a location, drive in, drive out. But human power, volunteering yourself to help distribute the food is also a great need, right? I think.
Yes, definitely. I think the food bank network, obviously there are food banks, we have a ton of staff, but that sort of food pantry network is really held up by volunteers. There are bigger organizations like the Red Cross that have professional staff, and there are smaller organizations and food pantries that are 100% volunteer. We also experience that the volunteer group seems to be made up often of older volunteers. So they're always in need of folks, volunteers in general, volunteers who can sort of take over and help sustain these organizations over time. Also just make a point that, obviously we just went through Thanksgiving, a time of incredible need and importance for folks to be celebrating and gathering together, but food assistance and food insecurity is sort of a year-round thing. So I would encourage you to, throughout the year, look for ways to connect with food pantries in your area because volunteers are so important, whether it's packing or helping to distribute or delivering boxes to folks who can't get out or stuffing envelopes, whatever it is, there's something for everybody at a food pantry.
And so this is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lindsay.
Just a question, and I don't know that there is an answer, or but I would think there is. If I'm making a decision of writing a check versus taking a box of food, is one more ideal to the organization? I mean, do you know what I'm asking? Which would be the preference, to write a check for $25 or have $25 worth of food if someone's making a decision?
So I would say from our perspective, it is the check, just because we have, as you know, I talked about it a little bit, we have an incredible buying power. We buy by the tractor trailer load. So the price that we're getting per, can of corn or per bag of potatoes is a lot less than what the retailer or the customer is paying retail in a grocery store. So in terms of the food bank, I would say definitely the dollar, because the dollar can go a lot farther based on our buying power. With a food pantry, I would sort of lean towards the check as well. We are currently, if they are associated with a food bank, like the Greater Boston Food Bank.
Or the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. I did look. We are part of Feeding America.
Or Greater Worcester County.
Or the Worcester County Food Bank. Because right now, for the last 2 years, we have been buying an incredible, we were before, but have really ramped up our buying, and food is available to agencies for free. So they are getting food for free from the food bank. So if they can use donations for other things, staffing, refrigerators, trucks to get to the food bank, all those sorts of things are super helpful.
Thank you. That's helpful. It kind of clicked too when you talked about seasonality, because this is your cash doesn't have a shelf life. You can use it, the food bank can use it for what they need when they need.
And we've also been, we've always done it at Thanksgiving, but for the last 2 years, we've been purchasing gift cards and distributing those to our food pantry partners. So in addition to what they are providing clients, like physically in food, they've been able to give clients gift cards to supplement what they're getting, to be able to go out and buy things that they like that a food pantry might not have, to enable them to maybe not visit as often. So that is, we have really focused on that this year as well.
Christina, this may be an unanswerable question. I wonder sometimes on need, right? Not necessarily seasonality. I know, right, food insecurity is 365 days a year, but it can certainly be impacted. It can become, I guess, maybe better or worse, if you will, based upon economic conditions. Is there any seasonality as well, like maybe holiday seasons or certain times of the year where people seem to need more, or no, it's just 365 days a year?
I would say largely 365. For different groups, there definitely is seasonality. I would also say that our food pantry partners often see sort of a timing within the month that they get more pantry visits. If folks are getting SNAP benefits or disability benefits or anything like that, maybe at the start of the month or the 15th of the month, there is sometimes a rise at the end of the month when folks may have run out of their SNAP benefits. So they went out, used those, bought what they need, and it didn't stretch to fill the month. So they definitely do see that sort of, not seasonality, but an effect from government benefits and that sort of timing.
You're muted, Lindsay. Sorry.
And I was just saying thank you so much.
Thank you all.
It is something that everyone knows intellectually, but you have to keep talking about it. It has to, people go on about their day and forget, like David said, it's 365. This isn't just at the holidays when we're feeling warm and fuzzy. It's got to be kept in front of us. Thank you.
I think it's important to note, Greater Boston Food Bank, all the food banks and how they affect our communities. If for whatever reason, someone out there who may watch this or hear about this who wants to get involved, if your community doesn't have a food bank or a food pantry, there may be other organizations that you can still help to alleviate food insecurity. A lot of organizations, and Christina, you mentioned there are groups and food pantries who are not even affiliated, but they are out there, and they do need our help. And Christina, I think there was at least one thing in the chat. I think it was Wendy Fetters who's on, thanking you for the work you do. And I know that Lindsay and I and everyone here, Ryan, I'm sure on his behalf, thank you, because it's amazing what you do. And it's amazing the way you touch lives and how many lives you touch. And people, I think, really don't understand sometimes the impact that can have on a family.
For sure. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you inviting us to be here and your thoughtful questions. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to share a comment from one of our attendees also saying, oh, thank you for the work that you do as well. Everyone appreciates the Greater Food Bank's work. I'm going to share a slide for everyone, if you'll bear with me for one moment, just to let everyone know what is coming up as well. And that is Thursday, December 16th at 11 a.m., Peace of Mind through Care Coordination with Kendal at Home. It's a virtual informational seminar for potential members and their families, and we invite you to please ask them to join you on that. And also Friday, December 17th at 11 a.m., Discover Tai Chi with Mary Cordray. Again, thanks to Friends Foundation for the Aging, Christina, for joining us today. This program would not be possible without them, and certainly without you. And again, thank you for all the work you do at the food bank.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you all.
Happy holidays. Stay warm, stay well.
Bye. Thank you.